Hello guys, good morning from this end, which is the United States, and good afternoon to others who are in other parts of the world. This quick video is definitely about the senseless killings of two Gambians who were protesting in Faraba Bantang. It is a sad thing for many, but I must first commend Gambians of conscience who've come out to condemn this unjust act. We've seen condemnations across the political spectrum. Even some who've been known to be staunch defenders of this government have come out to denounce this injustice. And that is what is expected of us Gambians. But I must start by saying I'm very sorry to Gambians. And the reason why I'm saying that is this. Leading to the 2016 elections, most of us in the diaspora campaigned very hard for this president now, Adama Barrow. And we had a good reason to campaign because of 22 years of brutal dictatorship where Gambians were killed, tortured, disappeared. I'm not apologizing for campaigning for the coalition, no, because I will do it again. My apology is that part of the utterances that I made then was a promise that the coalition, if elected into office, will never take the lives of Gambians. That killing, extrajudicial killing of Gambians would be a thing of the past. Then, of course, Haruna Jatta happened. There was a quick explanation. And we were informed that there would be an investigation. Up to today, not a single word had been uttered by this government about that investigation. Then we saw this government start arresting people who are protesting against the destruction of their environment. We see this government rely on laws, the same excuses that Jammeh relied on to deny Gambians of their rights to protest. And what happened yesterday was actually inevitable given the way that this government had been operating. The biggest problem that Gambia faces today is because Adama Barrow has decided to forgo the agenda that brought him to power, the agenda of reform, and substituted it with an agenda to stay in power for as long as possible. This is why Adama Barrow has decided, and you could tell from his speech when he met the elders of Banjul on Korite, that in spite of the agreement that he had with his coalition partners, that this would be a transitional government that would stay for no more than 3 years, he's decided to tell us in his own way that elections are over until the next one in 2021. Because to Adama Barrow, what is important to him is power. This is why Adama Barrow has decided that it is important for him to be cavorting with members of the APRC so as to help him entrench himself, consolidate his powers. In the process, Gambians are paying a very heavy price because everything that we thought we fought for is being negated by the actions of this government. Primarily, Adama Barrow. I'm not going to blame anybody else but Adama Barrow. He is the president and he was elected for a reason. When they started appointing people who worked very closely with Yaya Jammeh, we said, no, you cannot and must not do that. But we are called all kinds of names. But that's not important now. We saw what was coming. Because to us, you cannot reform a system by entrusting that reform to those who know nothing but abuse of a system. And what that would yield would be an abusive system, and that's what we have today. Because there is nothing more insulting than for this government to have appointed Mr. Jatta, who was, I think it was Mr. Jatta or whatever his name is, the former leader of the Speaker of the National Assembly, as an ambassador. Then to turn around and appoint the same IGP who was responsible for giving directives to the PIU to arrest the Solo Sendings and others of this world. Yes, Mr. Bojang, thank you so very much. You turn around and appoint that guy as your advisor to the Ministry of Interior. Mr. Barrow, I have seen pictures this morning of you visiting the victims. I'm not going to be easily swayed. I do not care about gestures. What I care about are concrete actions that are taken to make sure that what had happened will never happen again. In fact, it was never supposed to happen in the first place. Unless we want to forget, let's remember, Yaya Jammeh used to also send money to people who were victims of his regime. And I also do not buy this nonsense that we do not know who gave the orders to shoot. Of course, nobody would want to take ownership of it. But you know what orders we are given? That the PIU must be armed to the teeth to go and confront young Gambians who were protesting for the protection of their environment. You cannot bring a gun to a knife fight and not expect casualties. When they decided to arm the PIU, when they decided to send them in military gears to go and confront the protesters, they know exactly what they were doing. That is, stop it by any means necessary. And yes, they did. And today, we have 2 young Gambians dead because of those actions. We have so many other Gambians in the hospitals because of those actions. So to me, the responsibility lies with you, Adama Barrow, and your government. Your Minister of Interior, your IGP, your advisors, and everybody that you are co-voting with in the interest of you furthering your stay in power. We will never be fooled a second time. Our eyes are very wide open to what is happening. And this is why I support 100% the proposed protest in the Gambia on Sunday. Dafa doy. Yes, dafa doy. We've been dealing this for over 22 years and we will not deal with it anymore. And I hope your governments for once would do the right thing by respecting the rights of Gambians to peacefully gather and show their anger at what had happened or has been happening for a very long time. We've said to you so many times that the Gambia was sitting on a time bomb with these people that you are hobnobbing with and the serious land crisis that we have in that country. But no, Mr. Barrow, you do not care about what people say. All you do, you and your government, your state house especially, are very good at responding to your critics. Whether it was attacking Halifa Sallah because he said that there is no regime change, there is regime change but no system change. Or whether that was concocting a story to tarnish the image of Mai Fatty. Or recently, the one about OJ. That's what you've been doing. Or reminding people, Mr. Barrow, every time you speak, it were your words that when did it become so dark that we cannot recognize each other? And you must be asked that question again, Mr. President. When did it become so dark that you've forgotten what brought you to power? When did it become so dark for you to realize that we came out of 22 years of dictatorship? When did it become so dark, Mr. President, for you to remember that there was a coalition agenda that was relied on by the Gambians to support you, to change our situation? It's been close to 24 hours, Mr. President. We've not had a word from you other than the statements that are circulated on Twitter, on Facebook. The people of Faraba Bantang, the people who lost their their sons, the people who are now in serious agony, do not have the time to be going to a Facebook or a Twitter to hear what their president have to say. The same way that you, Mr. President, can go and talk about when it becomes so dark that people cannot recognize, is the same way, Mr. President, that you could have called GRTS to the State House and addressed the nation. We are not telling you to afford some blame, but you could have at least said, you know what? I am saddened. I am disgusted by what has happened, and I'm declaring a full and independent investigation into this matter. And to those that have lost their lives, I send my sincere condolences to you and your families. And my government will do everything within our powers to ensure that there is remedy to this situation, and never again will such a thing happen on my watch. You would have been applauded for speaking to the Gambian people. But no, Mr. President. To you, you have a problem. Your problem is social media. Social media this, social media that. The social media that you praised in being so instrumental in bringing you to power today is the social media that you believe is doing nothing but dividing a country. Social media reacts to what you do. When you do right, people will applaud you. If you do wrong, you better be ready to hear from us. So, Mr. President, this is the time to lead or get out of the way. And Gambia does not need strong leaders. What we need is a leader that would ensure that we have strong institutions that would put an end to something like what happened in Faraba. So I urge all Gambians, irrespective of where you stand, to join those patriotic Gambians on Sunday to tell your government, ne dafa doy. No Gambian blood must be shed because they are exercising a democratic right. And this greedy thing that is happening in our country, this outright greed that is seeing us have our lands taken by so-called developers or businessmen at the detriment of the people must stop. Mr. President, if you had listened to the Gambian people, you would not have had the need to come today after 2 Gambians had been brutally murdered to say that I am suspending all minings. That should have been done a long time ago. Mr. President, your best advice is to always listen to your critics, because somewhere, some way, they may say something you don't like, but may be of benefit to you. Your critics are not your enemies. It is only dictators who are afraid of their critics. So I hope that Gambians would understand what was voted for, and it's for democracy and not for dictatorship. We did not vote for our country to be mortgaged to a few. We did not vote for a government to abrogate our rights again. We voted for a government that would ensure democracy, liberty, and dignity for our people. And this is a great moment for us as a people and the government to go back and do what this government was voted for, and that is to ensure that there are proper reforms in that government. And after that, Mr. Barrow, you can step down and allow the Gambian people to vote for a party with their manifesto to steer the ship of our country to where it ought to be. This is unacceptable. And it is sad that you see now APRC people, the same people who used to counter-protest Gambians when they protested against Jammeh's killings, are the one now calling on people, where are you to protest? All protests must happen in the Gambia, because that's what we fought for. We fought for a democracy where Gambians do not have to fear to exercise their rights, democratic rights in that country. But we hope that this would be the very last of any single Gambian dying because the person chose or chooses to exercise a democratic right. So I hope that, Mr. President, the photoshops and all these things, photo ops on all these things that you are having, after all that, visiting and all that, that you would go back and realize that unless we have genuine reforms, nothing changes. Nothing, absolutely zero, zilch changes. What Gambia needs is not photo op. What Gambia needs is a leader who leads. It's a leader who abides by his words. It's a leader who ensures that there is democracy, there is liberty, and there is dignity for our people. And Mr. President, you must remember that Jammeh's biggest downfall was the headlines that were coming out of that country. How sad it is today that the Associated Press is writing about Gambian protesters being killed. It has been picked up by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and other leading newspapers around the world. It is a sad day for our country. And Mr. President, finally, let's remember that the 1.45 billion euros that was pledged to the Gambia were mostly contingent on good governance and respect for fundamental human and constitutional rights. Failure to do that, your summit in Brussels would amount to nothing. Jammeh's excesses cost the Gambia billions of dollars. Please, do not repeat it. And the sad thing is, you have now something in common with Jammeh, one more thing. That is, under your watch, Gambian protesters have been killed. You have blood in your hands. Whether you give the orders or not, you are giving the responsibility to lead. So because of that, that is now something that you will have to carry with you for the rest of your life. But you can turn around and make sure that these 2 deaths would be the last that would ever happen under your watch, without which you would just be an other person. Like they say, all wine in new bottle. With that, guys, thank you also very much. Let's keep fighting for our country, irrespective of who is the president, until we achieve a Gambia of liberty, dignity, and prosperity for all. Thank you, guys.